Hey everyone, welcome to a quick little workflow video that takes a look at one of the shots we got on the Sony a7S for our upcoming Shogun review. The shots I want to take a look at are the ones that appear to have a super slow motion effect. We had close to a full moon, and this was at about ISO 6400 or something like that. And this camera is so great in low light that I was actually bouncing moonlight. The only other lights in this scene are obviously Marika lighting a match. So the key with slowing down footage like this using Twixtor, for starters we filmed in 30 frames per second, and then right when I got into After Effects the first thing I did is transformed this down to 24. So it's not much, but already we're getting it down to 80% speed. Now I don't know how much of a factor this eventually has. I don't think it has much of a factor at all. So you can do this with footage shot in 25 or 24 frames per second as well. First thing I did is denoised the footage using Neat Video. Basically just tried to get a good reading, and then I turned sharpness up to 20% and hit apply. The other thing I liked to do in these high ISO shots is turn up this temporal filter radius. I think the default is 0, so I turned it up to like 3. The next thing I did is added an adjustment layer, and I created a LUT specifically for this shot. I am including this LUT file in a link. I applied that LUT, and then I pre-composed this layer. The key, I think, with this is to get the shot in your timeline to a point where there's not a lot of movements. And that just comes down to understanding how Twixtor works. But I knew that it wouldn't have a problem with the smoke, and it wouldn't have a problem with the changing light from the match. And even when slowed down, those things show that there's quite a bit of motion. Because sometimes with Twixtor, if there's not enough motion in the shot, it looks like it's just a still photograph. So I thought the smoke and then the changing light from the match were enough movement that I could slow this shot down quite a bit and still have it look like it's a video. So I got it to the point where she's lighting the cigar and there's some smoke coming up, but her hands aren't moving, her head's not really moving, so there's not a lot of movement in the shot for Twixtor to have trouble with. There's just the lighting from the match and the smoke. And then I pre-composed this layer. And then on this pre-composition is where I added the Twixtor Pro plugin. Changed the input frame rate to 24 frames per second, changed it to forward motion weighted blend, and then I changed the speed to like 20%. But even when I apply Twixtor and I slow it down to 20%, you can see there's some weird stuff going on with the smoke. And I fixed that by once again pre-composing this layer and then adding an effect called pixel motion blur. In After Effects you go down to time, add pixel motion blur. I changed it to 360-degree shutter with about 25 samples. And this just sort of added some fake motion blur to the smoke, which is I think all that Twixtor really needed to smooth that out. So that's basically it. This worked with a few shots and it didn't work with others. It just comes down to what kind of movement is in your shot. In this shot, for instance, really the only movement is the slow dolly move in and then Marika blinking. And Twixtor had a little bit of trouble with the movement on her eyelids as they blinked, but again, adding the motion blur, the fake motion blur, smoothed that out and it wasn't really noticeable. And I think there was just enough movement in this shot with the camera slowly pushing in that it didn't look like a still photograph. It looked like you could obviously tell it was video. And I think that effect with the Sony a7S is a really cool combination. A link to download this shot and the LUT file is in the description. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Luke Newman with Newman Films, and thank you for watching.